Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women that replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women in the United States, according to the CDC and NIH. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, or stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, and hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. Freeman, and you'll hear me interview other sisters in loss from around the world who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is activism. Storytelling is healing. Now let's get started. Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I would love for you to begin by sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, my name is Tatiana, but I go by Tots for short. Everybody calls me Tots. I am a professor and an environmental professional, sustainability and environmental education and environmental justice. And I teach about and really working with like underserved populations through those kinds of things. And so that's also the kind of stuff that I teach about is like sustainability and working with underserved communities and landowners and that kind of stuff as well. Yeah, I'm from Chicago originally, but I live in the South now.
Well, that is a great introduction, Tot. So now I need you to share the story because we kind of were pre-talking prior to pressing record, and she has a story to tell. So I would love for you to just take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your story.
Yeah. Okay. When I was growing up, like in high school and whatever, I used to always say like I wanted a really big family. I wanted to have like 9 kids, like just whole shebang. And I always kind of thought you'll go to college, you'll find your person. Like as soon as I graduated, I would get married and I would start making babies and like doing life and just working or whatever. When I actually got into undergrad and was doing school or whatever, I was in a relationship with somebody when I was maybe sophomore through junior, who was talking about like proposing when I graduated. And I realized that I really was not like ready for that and talking about like having kids. And I realized that I like was not ready for that. So then I went through a whole period of my adult life where I was just kind of still dating and wanting love or whatever, but really living my best life and enjoying my freedom and traveling and doing all of that. And was just kind of like, I don't really want kids. And somewhere, maybe like 3 years ago, all of a sudden I just started to want kids. I don't know if I maybe want kids again. I don't know if it was just my biological clock starting to talk to me or whatever, but suddenly I decided I wanted kids. I was single, and so I was coming to a decision of like, how exactly am I going to have those kids? And I went to, in 2021, it may have been 2021 or it may have been 2022. I went to a women's retreat and it was all about like natural birth or whatever, because I was always kind of like, you know, if I ever do, I want to have like a natural experience. I don't want to be in like a medicalized hospital environment and dealing with medical racism and all of this kind of stuff. I wanted to go. So I was on this like natural retreat, and there was a young lady who was there, and it was like maybe 200 plus women at this retreat, and maybe like a couple of handfuls of non-white women. And there was this young lady who was following me around. She was like 11 or 12. And she was a little Black girl. And like one of the like natural doulas who was there, who I was talking to about everything, I actually kind of said something like, I don't have any kids. And she was like, that girl's not your kid. And I was like, no. I was like, her mom is white. I was like, she's adopted. And she was like, I thought that girl was your daughter. She would follow you around on weekend. I guess you never saw her with this white woman that was her actual mom. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not my daughter. So it started me thinking. I was like, you know what? I should adopt. I was like, because so many little Black kids end up in these transracial adoptions because there's actually not a lot of Black people who are willing to like go through the adoption process. And so there's actually just not a lot of Black adoptive parents available. Or even sometimes you might be willing, but you're not able to afford it. Or because of the home study process, they throw your profile out for little stuff. Like if you might have like a misdemeanor or something, or your spouse has a misdemeanor or something that was a long time ago and actually wasn't a big deal, but you're not approved to adopt. Because I've heard of like a Black couple who was experiencing something like that, and a couple other people chimed in because I've been in some like online communities. And people were like, yeah, like I was not able to get approved because of some little situation from my past. But for whatever reason, there's just not a lot of Black adopted families. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna adopt so that I can I want to be a parent. I don't have a partner to do it with, and I can make sure to be somebody who's available for a little Black baby. So I go through the process, do my home study or whatever, and I start the adoption process. And I remember being told during that part, I was considering my options of like what adoption agency to go with. And many of them were very expensive. Like there was one who was like, yes, we're actually only taking Black parents right now because we have no shortage of white families. And the fact that you just came to us as a potential Black parent, yes, we're only taking Black parents right now. Yes, we really need you. It's going to be $48,000. And I was like, oh my God, $48,000. But they were like, but yes, like we really, yeah, we're really excited about this. But I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. So I ended up going through the route of an adoption, like they weren't a full service adoption agency. They just kind of like help you make a profile. They connect you. You kind of get a la carte services. Like a full service agency will do your home study. So they'll have like social workers in-house who can work with you through all the visits and all of the background checks and all of the looking into your financial life and all of the looking into your family history and all of that. They will work directly with birth moms. They will vet them to make sure that they have had birth mom counseling to know that they really want to do this adoption process. They will help to connect them with social workers. They will help with making sure that they are getting any prenatal care that they might need to get, to confirm that they're even pregnant at all, because sometimes people might try to pretend like they're pregnant and they're not or whatever. So they'll like do all of the vetting, and they'll have lawyers in house who will actually work with you through the like filing and finalization process. So that's what that $48,000 agency was. And I was like, $48,000 sounds like a lot. So I ended up going with this other agency who does not have lawyers in house. They don't have social workers in house. They don't do any birth mom vetting. All they basically do is connect prospective adoptive parents with random women who come in and just say they want to do an adoption, and then you kind of do all the other stuff on your own. So you've had to work with somebody else to get your home study ahead of time. You hire a lawyer after you get connected with somebody and kind of do all of that, but it's cheaper. So this process, it was like I think it was 21,000 or something like that. And then you have to pay for these other services kind of as the need arises for them. And so my thinking was, I can choose an attorney who might not be a crazy amount, or I can choose, a whatever to try to keep it a little, I was thinking maybe it would cost me more in the range of overall. And they give you like some estimates of things that I would be able to keep it more in the range of 30 versus 48. So that's where my head was. So I went through, did that, and they told me, like, as a Black person, you're probably gonna get a lot of people reaching out to you. Some of our white couples might be waiting, and it's a 2-year contract. They're like, some of them might be waiting the whole 2 years and never get anybody who wants to match with them. They said, in our experience, the Black ones get a lot of interest. They'll put like a public profile up. You get a lot of interest in your profile. And so you're probably going to start to get interest really quickly. So I think it was maybe my profile had been up for maybe a week, and and somebody reached out and was like they were interested in my profile. So we started talking, whatever. We end up getting connected, and she decides that she wants to proceed with me. And so I'm like, a la carte getting these services. Now you pay for birth mom support. So while the birth mom is pregnant, if she's got bills, you're paying her bills. If she needs a doctor's appointment, you're paying for her doctor's appointment. If she needs groceries or Uber or whatever, like you pay for all of that. Now you can limit and say like, I'm not willing to pay more than $1,000 a month or whatever way you want to limit it. But and some states don't allow birth mom support, but many states do allow birth mom support. Um, and so this person I was connected with was not in the same state that I was in, but so you're going by the state that they're in or whatever. And so like it was, whatever. So I had my attorney. My attorney wanted to confirm that she was, pregnant or whatever before issuing any birth mom support. I ended up going down, meeting her, whatever. We got matched. My attorney had some hesitations about whether or not she was actually going to place. She was like, the way she's behaving, I don't know about this. But the agency that I was working with was like, oh, no, this is normal for birth moms to be acting a little, standoffish and not always respond to your text. They're like, they're dealing with a lot, you know, this is uncomfortable. And I had never gone through this before. So I'm like, they're saying this. But my attorney is like, I'm not sure about this. And I was also concerned because I had paid for this 2-year contract. And I was concerned that if I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this, that they would be less inclined to try to like support matching me with somebody else. So even though my attorney was telling me, I don't know about this person, I was feeling pressured to proceed anyway. So we matched in like October, I think, of 2022. And she, or maybe even September. Anyway, it was like fall of 2022. And she was due March 1st of 2023. And by the time that like it got time like on the baby's due date or whatever, when I had set up all of the nursery, I had prepared everything, I had been paying birth mom support, I had like told my employers and all of this, whatever, she decides that she doesn't want to place. So that was really terrible because people knew that I was expecting a baby to come home. Not only just my employers, but my family, my friends. I had been looking forward to this for months. I mean, I had prepared everything. Like everything that needed to be prepared to do this was prepared. I had gone out and met her, taken her to lunch and done all of this. And we went, I had her prenatal massage and like whatever. When we had met and had a good meeting, and then she decided not to place, which is always a possibility. You just never know. Because they can just change. Now, in some states, you can sign away your rights before the baby is born. I would say that's probably more of a backward thinking state, but there are some states where you can do that. She was not in one of the states where you can do that. And so she hadn't. Um, and in some states, even after you've taken the baby home, they can still change their mind for a period of time. So that is kind of, you just never know where things are going to land. So I ended up so that was March 1 that she backed out. I ended up getting matched with another birth mom, not actually too long later, who was in a different state and who was due at the end of May. So again, I told my friends, I matched with somebody else, new date now, like told my family, told my employer. And this particular time, like we had drawn up all the paperwork or what have you, but again, it was a situation where you're not allowed to actually relinquish until the baby is born. I hadn't actually gone out and met this birth mom before the baby came. We had just, been in communication on the phone or whatever. But she was, telling me that she had a 10-month-old baby. She was young. She was the same age as the other one who was like 20 and just didn't feel like she could do it. And this time, when the baby came, she asked me to like come a few days before the baby was due so that I would like be close by. So I was in the area. She ended up calling me in the middle of the night. Actually, I think it was the baby daddy. But she told me he actually wanted the baby daddy, but he thought he was the baby daddy. Called in the middle of the night. It was like her water just broke, whatever. So I go over there, I pick her up. I don't know why he couldn't take her to the hospital, but I go over there, I pick her up, we go to the hospital. So it was just us. She didn't want anybody else there. So I was holding her hand the whole time. I cut the cord. I held the baby. I had never actually gone out with the first baby. This time I went out there, you know, and I was like, oh my God. So it felt really real. Like I was there. Nobody else. She was like, I don't want anybody else here. I only want us. She didn't actually even want to hold the baby. And like, but ultimately, I needed to go. I kind of regret this, but I hadn't like thought about getting all of my belongings out of the hotel and like whatever. And the hospital had set up a room for me to be in with the baby until it was time for the baby to leave. And so they were like, okay, we're gonna have you in this room over here. Mom like doesn't want, to be with the baby or whatever. And so, this is where you're gonna be. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to my hotel and get my stuff and come back and like whatever. While I was gone, they convinced her to do skin to skin contact with the baby. And she had changed her mind. And to me, it just felt like one of those situations like when you want to get an abortion and like, oh, you gotta listen to the heartbeat. And they were like, yeah, do some skin to skin. I'm like, why? She said she did not want to touch the baby. She said she didn't want to do any of this. She hadn't held the baby, none of this. And then I leave and it just felt like they were trying to get her to change her mind. So I come back and she's doing skin to skin and suddenly she doesn't want me around. She's like, whatever. And she's changed her mind. I was very upset. I was like talking to the hospital social worker. I'm like, why would you do this? Like, and and what I didn't really fully understand either was that some of the paperwork that the lawyers had drawn up, she could have signed prior, just not the relinquishment part. But I think when they saw that like none of it had been signed, and I didn't fully understand that not being able to sign the relinquishment doesn't mean you can't sign some of the other paperwork, made it maybe look away. And the fact that we actually were not, because they were like, well, what adoption agency are you working with? And I actually was not working with a full service adoption agency. I had just had this marketing agency that connects you, but not a full service agency. And so we had attorneys involved, but this particular hospital, they had not spoken to our adoption attorney because I had hired one for her and one for me, because that's just how it works. Like you pay for the birth mom's attorney. And they hadn't spoken to our attorneys beforehand, so they didn't know that an adoption was going to be. Usually, I guess the hospital is notified ahead of time that and so they hadn't been notified of any of this. So I think they thought that I was some shady person who was trying to maybe steal this girl's baby. But I was that's at least how I felt. Like they were treating me like I was some shady person who was trying to steal this girl's baby. I'm like, she came to me. Like my profile was publicly found. She found me. But I was just so upset because I was more upset than the first one because I had held the baby, I had held her hand, I had cut the cord, it started to actually feel real, and I thought it was going to work out that time, and then I felt like they were treating me like, because they're like, who are you? Like, this isn't, whatever. And I'm like, she came to me like I'm not some weirdo. But without it being a full service agency who was involved in some of the things that they were used to happening in adoption not having happened, I just think that they thought it was like some weird situation. So I ended up like sending a long email to the social worker after and was like, this is my profile. This is my home study. I'm not some weirdo, but whatever. So, and my attorney was telling me like, do not leave the hospital. I said, I'm leaving. Like I've been here. I've spent my money to come down here because I had to pay for my flight. I had to pay to stay in this hotel room. Like I've missed work. My all staff like retreat was happening that week and I was not actually there because I was here with this woman. So then yet again, I had to tell my boss, again, you thought this was happening. I was going to go on maternity leave and I'm actually not. And so like, I was just like, I'm not staying here anymore. I'm going home. Because she was like, maybe she'll change her mind again or whatever. I'm like, no, like, if that's the case, I will come back. But I'm going home now. So I flew back home. And mind you, through all of this of me like choosing to adopt, with adoption being there's like a lot of informal adoptions that happen in the Black community where maybe grandma is raising a baby or maybe, whatever, but like actually formally going through the adoption process is actually not common or popular. And so I've been getting a lot of like scrutiny from people of like, why are you, somebody who's only in your 30s, choosing to even do this adoption thing with somebody that you don't even know? And like, why don't you just have your own baby? Like a lot of people would say to me, like, why don't you just have your own baby? Just have your own baby. And I was just like, I was very offended when people would say this to me because I'm like, how do you even know like what my situation is for you to even say something like just have your own baby? And so, but after these two failed adoptions, I was like, well, darn, like maybe this is some sort of sign. Maybe I'm not meant to do this adoption thing. Maybe I am supposed to just like try to have baby. And I had always been really fearful of being pregnant and giving birth because I've heard like you could die giving birth or like it just hurts really bad and I tore open and all of this stuff. And so I was honestly just really scared and I didn't really feel like I needed to do that to become a parent. But after these two failed adoptions, I was like, well, darn, like maybe I should listen to all these people who kept telling me just have your own baby and just try to have a baby. So I had been on birth control for like a long time and I ended up like getting off my birth control and deciding that I was going to try to get pregnant. And I was like, so now I have to find somebody to get me pregnant. So now I did not go the traditional sperm bank route. You can go to a sperm bank and purchase sperm. It's like $1,000. And then going through like IUI or whatever, or IVF or whatever process you choose is going to cost a lot of other money. I was already deep in the hole from all of this, from the money that I had spent on the $20,000 on this agency, the lawyer's fees and the birth mom support and all of this twice through that didn't work out, the travel expenses. And so I was just kind of like, I don't really want to spend $1,000 on some sperm and I don't even know if it's gonna hit. And then the process of trying to do it or whatever. And I had actually heard somebody on social media who was talking about how she was pregnant once. And she had found a sperm donor through like private communities of people who are just willing to exchange these things in a private interaction as opposed to going to a sperm bank. So I was like, I'm gonna find somebody and there's like apps that you can use, like where I could be on there and say, like, I'm willing to donate an egg. Somebody could say, I'm willing to be a surrogate. I'm willing to give you sperm. Like, there's just communities where you can have, when you can, like, kind of like online date, but find people who have what you need. If you need somebody to be a surrogate, or if you need somebody to give you an egg, or if you need somebody to give you some sperm or whatever, whatever. And so I ended up going that route and finding someone to be my donor. And so I had all of his paperwork or whatever, but we did not go through a facility. We did more of like a turkey-based or 70s kind of a method. And so, and because I had been on birth control for so many years, I hadn't actually even had a menstrual cycle in 8 years. I did not relish the idea of having a period. I hate periods. I know a lot of people are, oh, I feel so connected to my womanhood from my period. I don't. I didn't want my period back, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to do this if I like this is what I have to do now. This adoption thing isn't working. So I got off my birth control. I had one period and then I got pregnant. And I was like, yay. So now I'm like, all right, whatever. But then I had started to hear like, don't tell people until you hit the second trimester. Like, you just never know what could happen in the first try. Like, I had heard this before I ever got pregnant. Like, don't tell, like, whatever, whatever. So I'm like, I don't know if this is really gonna actually, but I was so happy, but I was like, I don't know if this is gonna, whatever. So I'm not really telling people. And at that time, I got matched with a third birth mom. And she was due, and so it was in August of 2023 when I found out that I was pregnant. August 7th, I found out I was pregnant. And like that same week, I got matched with another birth mom. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to proceed with that process and with my pregnancy because I don't know what's going to happen with like the first trimester situation. She had actually been matched with somebody else and the adoptive person backed out. And so she was talking about like how this woman, kind of left her. She's like, why does she want my baby? And she was feeling really abandoned or whatever. And so I'm like, she wouldn't possibly. I felt a little more safe being that she had been through uh uh whatever. And she was older. She was in her 30s. We were the same age. And and I've had a different attorney every time because I had an attorney in the state that each birth mom was in. This was a third birth mom, third state. So new retainer. And they were telling me like older birth moms usually don't back out so much. If it's not their first baby, they're less likely to back out. And she had like 3 kids, I think, and was really struggling financially to support them, and was like, her baby's dads weren't helping. And my attorney was telling me, like, I get good feelings about this one. I think it's gonna work out. And mind you, my first attorney and the other one was telling me the opposite. So I'm like, this attorney has been doing this for a while. She's feeling like it's good. I had gone to meet her in the state that she was in, and she took me to a doctor's appointment, and she's like, that's a really good sign. Like, I think this is gonna, work out. And so I'm telling my supervisor this, and my supervisor was like, Tots, how are you gonna proceed with an adoption and a pregnancy? I said, if I get both of these babies, I'm just gonna have 2 babies, because I've been struggling for all this time. I was willing to accept twins if twins ever came to me. So having 2 babies within a few months of each other, I think they would have ended up being like 7 months apart or something. I was like, I'm just going to keep that blessing and just receive those blessings. So I'm going to proceed with both. And she's like, okay. So we're looking at our work policy to see like how many maternity leaves can you get within a year or whatever. So I was going to proceed with both. Ultimately, so she was due in October, and she ended up giving birth, decided not to place again.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.